Greetings everyone, we are from the second group, want to present our presentations about pest population dynamics. But before we get into the first explanations, let me introduce the members of the group. There is Nolalita ABC Tumayang and Yosafat Felix L. Tambubolon, with student ID number of each person next to each name. The topics of presentation is number 1 is introductions, 2 pest population development, 3 table of life, 4 natural balance mechanism. Number 1 introduction. Pests are harmful and unwanted plant disturbing organism. Pests can cause physical or physiological damage to plant. Population is a group of individuals of a type of creatures belonging to one species and at a certain time inhabit a certain area. Population growth is an ecological process that can be described as the trajectory of an object changing place or changing status from one point to the next. And this dynamic process is the study of population dynamics. Population dynamics is the rise and fall of the number of insects in a population that is influenced by reproductions, death, and displacement. A population can increase or decrease according to time and environmental condition. The population of each type of organism in an ecosystem is never the same from time to time, but rises and falls following or around an asymptotic line called the population equilibrium line.
The second is pest population development. Pest population development is the causes of the rise and fall of insect populations are influenced by natality or birth mortality or death and immigration or movement. The factors that determine the high and low population of an organism consist of internal vectors and external vectors. In internal vectors, there are three things that affect the internal vectors. For the first is breeding ability. High and low reproductive ability is influenced by breeding speed and sex ratio. The higher the ability to produce, the faster it will grow. Its speed is influenced by personality and developmental period. Personality is the magnitude of the ability of a pest species to produce new offspring, while the development period is the time it takes to development from the time the egg is realized until it is sexually mature. The second is self-defense properties. Plant pests have the ability to defend themselves against disturbances from other organisms in the vicinity. And the last is imago age. Imago age affects the increase in pest population. The older the mammal, the more opportunities to lay eggs. Next is external vectors. First thing first is climate. The elements of climate that have a major influence on the development of pests are: first is humidity. Humidity will affect breeding and life activities. For example, warehouse pests can only attack if the moisture content of rice or corn is above 14%. And the second is light. Some insect activity is influenced by their response to light. So there are insects that are activity in the morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Sunlight can affect its activity and distribution. Third is temperature. Environmental temperature greatly affects the body temperature of insects, where each insect has a certain temperature range. The fourth is rainfall. High rainfall can affect the development of insect populations directly. For small insects, creating good conditions for the proliferation of disease that can make insects sick and die. And the last is swine. The direction of the spread of insects sometimes follows the direction of the wind. Wine affects the development of pests, especially in the process of spreading plant pests. The second effect of external vectors is soil. Soil with a low structure, high organic matter content, and sufficient moisture can support the development of pests that live all or part of their lives in the soil. For example, root flies, tulacones, rhinoceros beetles that live in the ground. And the last effect is host plants. Host plants are plants that serve as food and shelter for pest organisms. For food is another factor that greatly determines the development of insect pest populations. In relation to food, each type of insect has a different host range, namely monophage is live and eat only one or a few species in a particular family. Polyphage is live and eat on various species in various families, and oligophage is live and feed on various families, feed on several species in the same family.
Number 3, table of life. Table of life is a simple method used to track changes in an animal's population. The life table is useful for calculating various statistical aspects, which are population information such as birth, mortality, and changes of survival breeding. The benefit of analyzing the life table is that it can identify various mortality factors, abiotic and biotic, that affect development of pest population, determine mortality factor that affect and phase of pest life development, and determine when and how to control pests most effectively. There are two kinds of tables, namely dynamic or cohort or horizontal type tables, and static or vertical living tables. The way to make a life table is to observe a group of individuals or population from egg or birth, hatch until they become adult and die. Horizontal life table or cohort. It is a static system life table that cannot be applied to all organisms, especially long-lived organisms. The cohort life table is able to explain the net reproduction rate, the average life period in a generation, the reproductive potential value of population in one generation, and the value of the ability of a population to reproduce in one generation. Vertical life table. It is a dynamic system life table that can be used to predict population of organisms or insects that have long life spans. This life table is based on the age structure or development stage of insect. Each age group is considered a fixed age structure. There are two methods in creating a life table, namely age-specific life table and time-specific life table. Age-specific life table is a table that is created based on a certain age level during his life. Usually the table is static or fluctuating, while time-specific life table is a table that is created based on a certain time during his life, and usually the table is dynamic at a certain time. The given time assumes that there is the same birth rate among all stadia.
The last topic is natural balance mechanism. First is population control mechanism in ecosystem. Biological control is the use of natural enemies to control pest populations, both introduced and existing in an area or location. The rise and fall of the population of organisms are determined by two forces in the ecosystem, namely the biological ability or biotic potential and environmental constraints. Environmental constraints are various biotic and abiotic vectors in an ecosystem that tend to reduce the vitality and survival of individuals in a population of organisms. Environmental perils can be grouped into two vectors, namely vectors originating from outside the population or extrinsic factors and vectors originating from within the population or intrinsic vectors. Extrinsic vectors can consist of biotic vectors like wood, predation, composition, competition, etc., and abiotic vectors like climate, soil, water, and etc. While the intrinsic vector, for example, is the form of interspecific competition in the form of territorial and social pressure.
That's all about our presentations. If you have anything to ask, write your question in forum group discussion in Spada Wimaya. For your attention, we say thanks.